Kong in the trunk. King Kong, King Kong, King Kong.
I'm back, Rodrans, with my continuing horror podcast on Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th ranks. And as you saw from a little more elaborate intro this time, we are officially in the top 3. As you guys know, these are completely informal videos, and they're longer videos where I talk about the film, talk about ancillary things surrounding the film, give a review at the end, or what I actually think. I can tell you first thing right off the bat, which is going to be surprising to a lot of Friday fans, because, like I said, next to Star Wars, Friday the 13th is my other franchise. It is my other franchise that I know inside and out. I've even said I probably know the Friday, even though I would put Star Wars ahead, I probably know the Friday franchise better than I do Star Wars. But the stories obviously aren't as elaborate. There's not a legends and things like that, you know. Although I think there are some books out there, but I haven't read them, so it's neither here nor there. But the one thing that will surprise everybody is, that's right, the reboot. I don't call this a remake. The reboot is number 3 on my list. And there are some things I really love about this movie. And there are, even though it's number 3, there are some misses, or at least some opportunities that could have been taken advantage of. But the one thing I'll say right off the bat is it's as high as it is because of the performance of Derek Mears as Jason Voorhees. For years, I thought C.J. Graham gave the best performance until this film came out. No offense, Kane Hodder, if you watch this. I mean, you're a great Jason, for crying out loud. And I think for most people, Kane is probably Jason. And I guess really and truly, Kane is Jason. He just played Jason so many times. But the one singular performance that I put above all of them is Derek in this reboot. He really, in my opinion, made this movie what it ended up being. Now, this movie is strange in horror communities because, you know, I never did hate the fact that they started remaking horror movies. In fact, it started a long time back. You know, they remade horror movies years and years before the Chainsaw remake came out, or reboot. I always call them reboot because it breathes new life into what were essentially stagnant franchises. And that's a fact. You know, it's franchises that needed sort of a retelling in order to get audiences back in. And the one thing this movie has got in common with Chainsaw and with Zombies Halloween, I can't wait to get to that countdown, is audiences opening weekend loved this movie. They loved it. It was one of the best theater experiences I've ever had with any audience at all. And I'm not talking about audiences. I mean, I remember the Rotten Tomato scores for this movie were very high the first weekend. And then over time, much like with Chainsaw and with Halloween, it became cool. You were one of the cool kids if you hated the movie. And I say horseshit on that. you guys know I'm not going to follow anybody's narrative. I'm absolutely not. I went back to look at my website to see if I had my review up, and I did. What I will tell you is I don't feel as strongly about this movie as I once did, but I still feel pretty damn strongly about it. And there were things I really liked about the movie, things I didn't like. But again, it came back to Derek's performance in many ways as Jason, and we'll get to that. This movie was produced by Platinum Dunes, which is was Brad Fuller, Michael Bay, and Brad Fuller's Andrew Form, their horror production company, Platinum Dunes. And they were able to get together with New Line and Paramount because you had to have both parties, because Jason and the Friday the 13th name were coming back together, which is also something I really loved. We're finally getting Jason back together for the first time since Jason Takes Manhattan, that you had Friday the 13th in a name of a film with Jason Voorhees involved. And believe it or not, even when this came out in 2009, 20 years. Something else I really liked, and I did not know I was going to appreciate it, and I did not know I needed it, but I loved the fact that Jason was human again. As much as I love, especially one of the films where he is sort of a Frankenstein supernatural telling of that, I really appreciated seeing Jason back to being human. Because when you humanize the character again, there's this much of a chance that Jason is in danger. The stakes are a little higher for Jason, because at the end of the day, he's not some supernatural being anymore. And Jason can, in theory, be killed. And I like that. I like the idea that there's some stakes involved for Jason again. Very quickly, movie is directed by Marcus Nispel. He did the Texas Chainsaw Massacre also for Platinum Dunes. If you're asking me which one is the better film, I will tell you that the Chainsaw Massacre is the better film. And if I had to rank all of the remakes, and that might be an interesting video podcast to do in itself. But very quickly, I'll just give it away. If I had to rank all the reboots that came out over the last 20 years, it would be Chainsaw. It would be The Hills Have Eyes, which to me was wildly better than the original. And then this film. Okay. So, that's, and Nispel directed both of them. Now, this film was written by Damian Shannon and Mark Swift. You might be like, I know those names. You do know those names because those were the writers that did Freddy vs. Jason. And they wanted to be involved. Number one, those two guys, for all the crap they've taken for this movie, those two guys are huge Jason fans. They're huge Friday the 13th fans. And not only that, but they wanted to capture the correct tone for this movie, because that was a big miss for them. They did not mean, when they wrote Freddy vs. Jason, they didn't mean the tone to end up the way that it did. Like, the tone of that movie was a little more action. Part of that's got to do with the fact that Ronnie Yu directed Freddy vs. Jason. And it was a little sleeker. They wanted a more grungier, dirty feel to the movie, like this Friday movie had. A darker tone to Freddy vs. Jason. They didn't get it, and they said, whoa, no matter what, we're going to try to capture that with this Friday reboot. And what this ended up being was, it's essentially parts of the first 4 movies re-imaged into one film. Okay. This movie was made, had a pretty stout budget on it. $19 million, grossed $92.7 million. The largest, second largest grossing Friday movie ever, behind only Freddy vs. Jason. So, the last 2 movies that Jason has been involved with has made at least $90 million each. And Freddy vs. Jason made a lot more than that. I think it made 150 something million, something like it was high. It was high. Especially when you consider how long it's been. 2003 was when that movie came out. Now, this movie had recognizable faces in it. You had Jared Padalecki from the star of Supernatural, WB Supernatural, and oddly enough, 2 films, both in 2009 that came out, both starring the 2 stars of Supernatural in the same year. The My Bloody Valentine remake, which is really good, had Jensen Ackles in it, the co-star to Jared, and then Jared was in Friday the 13th. And that My Bloody Valentine remake is really good. It's really good. Todd Farmer wrote that. So he comes in as a character named Clay. What I will tell you, next to Jason Lives, number one, this has the longest opening before you get to the credits of any Friday the 13th film ever, before you actually see the title card come out. 21, almost 22 minutes before you get to the infamous, and it's a great reveal, the title card. And the first 22 minutes of this film is a 10 out of 10. The first 22 minutes of this film is awesome. Now, that would actually hurt the overall film in a way, and we'll talk about that later. But one of the things that's interesting is, you notice right off the bat, when this film opens up and they show the lake, and of course I had my horror website, so I already knew where it was being filmed. But even when they showed the initial, not the Pamela Voorhees part that was in the beginning, which to me made a lot of sense. They had Counselor, Pamela Voorhees. Pamela attacks Counselor. Counselor cuts off Pamela's head. And Jason is in the woods and he witnesses it. Firsthand, we know he does. I like that. It takes the ambiguity out of it. It takes the, was he in the woods watching, blah, blah, blah. I liked it. His mother had a locket that had a picture of her around her neck, a piece that was around her neck, and her head gets cut off. Well, he comes out of the woods, little kid, picks up that locket, picks up the machete the counselor had. That's the machete right there, badass machete. Picks up the machete and walks off, and it zooms in on Pamela Voorhees' head, and it says, "Kill for mother." Darkness. And I really liked that. I liked it a lot, and it was in black and white, which was crazy. And it gave us a timeline. It said 1980. Now, Shannon and Swift actually approached the studio about setting this film in the 80s. And the studio said, not a chance. So they got shut down real fast. But it does make me wonder, with the coming out of the massive success that Stranger Things has been, if they proposed that now, would they get told no? Because I think a Friday movie that's actually set back in the 80s, literally put back into the 80s, with that full Goonies, you know, the feel, the Stranger Things feel. You can see something that's supposed to be in the 80s or from the 80s, and you're like, immediate. That's why Stranger Things is so good, is it feels like it's set in the 80s. It makes me wonder if they approached with that same idea now, would they get the same pushback? Because they said it was an immediate hell no. Because now, I actually think it would be a selling point to place the film back in the... And people would talk about that prior to going in. This thing's supposed to be set back in the 80s. I am thirsty as a mother. Anyway, like I said, informal. I'm going to smoke. These videos aren't monetized. Did a live stream on Road Rants this morning. And I'll probably make those morning live streams a thing. I enjoyed it on Sunday mornings. Had a good turnout, too. At one point, had 20 people watching. And that's great, considering the change in content the channels had. I considered doing this one live. I considered doing all the top threes live. But I was like, no, there's some ancillary stuff I want to add to it. So, now, after we go from 1980 back to present day, we meet our first set of young adults. I'm going to call them young adults. They're adults. Ignorant ass adults, but young adults. And they're out there on a camping trip, but they're kind of brought out there. Two buddies, Jonathan Sadowski is one of them, I believe is his name. And one of the things this film suffers from is the first set of young adults is wildly more entertaining and more interesting than the next set. So before we even get, like I said, there's almost like a mini Friday movie before you get to the title. And it said it's one of the longest before credit title scenes in the history of movie. That's what the documentary said. And you realize exactly what we are dealing with pretty quickly. Now, we meet these young adults. One of them is played by Amanda Rigetti, a beauty. Redhead, tall. I'd say she's got to be 5'10", probably. And she is the sister of Clay, who is Jared Padalecki's character later that we meet. We've got 3 guys, 2 girls. Okay. And 2 of the guys, unbeknownst to some in the crew, they've got them out there in that location because they found out through somebody they know that there is a massive stash of weed out there in the woods somewhere. Honestly, that's not that unusual. You hear about that quite a bit around East Texas, actually. And that's the thing. Anytime people that live in the city don't understand that. But anytime you've got this much acreage, that some of it never sees a step on it, theoretically, you can have a couple old boys go out there, you know, and just what we see in this, right? Or it may have been as simple as some weed got loose out there. We know how that is, I hear. And I've heard stories. And some wild grew, right? And they get out there, and there's some really great dialogue amongst this group. And there's a guy, he wears glasses. They sit down around a campfire. They're like, we're gonna camp here. And he's got a GPS, and he thinks he knows the location of the weed by the coordinates. What he realizes after they set up camp, oh shit, something to do with the calibration on the GPS hadn't been working right. And he finds out, shit, they're almost on top of the weed. He tells one guy, he's like, God, we're a half a mile away or less. That don't seem that damn close to me, but okay. And I think we find out they're a lot closer to the weed and for some reason, the weed was a triggering point with some fans. Was Jason a drug dealer? I literally heard that. And I was like, stick 9,000 forks directly into your eye holes right now. No, I mean, look, somebody planted some weed in the woods, all right? And somebody found out about it, blah, blah, blah. One guy tells another guy, hey, I think there's some blah, and it goes from there. Jason was not growing weed. I heard that, and that literally became a thing around this movie. Well, it doesn't make any sense that Jason was growing weed. Well, he wasn't, you fucktard. That's why it doesn't make sense. So, look at how many teens over the years is supposed to have come out there, right? Good God. Sometimes. So anyway, I never held that against the movie because that's a false narrative as far as I'm concerned. There's great flirtation between one guy and this girl he's interested in as part. And we're still in the first group now. And then Amanda Righetti's boyfriend he's really likable. Her character's really likable. But they're sitting around a campfire, and one of them starts telling the story of Jason. You know, he watched his mom be beheaded. And somebody said that was a Crystal Lake. And one of the guys, and oddly enough, one of the guys is the dark-haired star of the NBC series Superstore now. The main character on Superstore is one of the guys in this first group. And which has been a pretty... I actually watched the first 2 seasons of Superstore. Funny show. It really is a funny show that takes place in a retail outlet. He's telling the story of... I'll try to do cut here. So anyway, he's telling the story of Jason, right? And the guy says, and we're at... This is it. This is Crystal Lake. And the guy says, what we all know... Do you know how many Crystal Lakes there are? He said, good hell, you can't walk into a grocery store and buy drinking water without it being crystal something. And the guy on point, perfectly, great timing, says Aquafina. And every time I watch the movie, I laugh my ass off. I'm like, that is perfect. I mean, that delivery was so good. He says Aquafina. Like, fuck you, Aquafina, bastard. The hell it is. Aquafina is not crystal nothing. We're all gonna die, okay? I mean, it was just that kind of funny, that kind of cool. And then they tell the story of, if you got lost in the woods, do you know you can drink your own piss? And I'm like, I'm just laughing my ass off. And the girl sitting behind him says, for the record, You will not drink my piss. And he turned around and said, you want to bet? Laughed my ass off. And I was like, oh, these guys are great. I'm thinking to myself, if these are the ones we're getting for the whole movie, good God, they'll go down in Friday history as the best crew we ever got, This was not the ones we would ultimately get. So anyway, he tells the story of Jason and the camp and all this stuff. Well, after the story, Amanda Rigetti and her boyfriend decided to go on a walk, like everybody has to in these movies. And the visuals are so good in this movie. It's one of the things that makes it really work for me. Number one, it feels like the woods in Texas. It does. I've lived in West Texas before. I've lived in Central Texas. I live in East Texas. And it feels so much like Texas at night in this film. And you see them walking up. Camp Crystal Lake sign is still hanging up, looking like a hot mess. And I'm like, man, it just feels very, very creepy. It feels very intimidating. At this point, you have not seen Jason. You have not seen Jason. You don't know what's coming. Well, the three that are left at the camp, the guy and the girl, okay, they flirted around so much, it's time to go to the tent. And the guy's like, okay, well, I'm going to go take a piss. And he puts his headset in, and he walks out into the woods to take a piss. Now, Derek Mears, who plays Jason in this movie, told a great story that he went off to take a piss. Not in this scene, but he had went off to take a piss while they were filming. And he was in full makeup. So as a crew, they decided to work their way around this guy that went off to take a piss, the guy wearing the glasses at the beginning of the movie. And as he's taking a piss, Derek Mears comes out of the woods as Jason, charging the guy while he is taking a piss. We're talking not when the film is filming, just as a practical joke on the guy. And Derek Mears is saying, the guy literally starts screaming, hands start going up, feet, arms, knees start going up. He's running, but he said he's not going anywhere. He's just running in place, screaming. And the guy said he was caught between, I didn't know whether to run or try to sock him in the mouth. I was that scared. So that sounds like the greatest practical joke ever, but that's just one of the collateral things around the movie that I thought was really cool. One of the great stories around making this thing. Now, evidently there was some controversy on this movie. Marcus Nispel, the director, Brad Fuller, the producer, and some of the producers around it, I guess Andrew Form. I don't know how much Michael Bay was actually out there. Evidently they would be doing rewrites as producers and screenwriters over here, show up on the set. Marcus would show up to shoot what was on the script, and find out that's not what we're shooting today. So they were doing rewrites on the fly. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Ideally, you don't want to see that happen, but God, that happens a lot on movies. People don't realize that. So, and the actors said they never really sensed that there was any controversy. They said it was almost akin to parents fighting, but the parents were fighting after the kids go to bed. You knew something was going on, you just didn't know what it was, kind of thing. So, I thought that was interesting. So, as Amanda Rigetti and her boyfriend are walking off, The cabins are one way, and he's like, do you want to go to the cabin? She's like, no, I don't want to go there. And she's like, it's really creepy out here. Let's go back. And I'm thinking, it's creepy as fuck out here, but y'all just do whatever you got to do. Well, they decide to go another direction, and they come upon an old, beaten-up shack. And a more, if you want to call it, it's a nod to, let's just call it a nicer version of the shack in part 2. Okay. And this is where we're covering, you fill territories of different films as you go along. And so we're kind of in part 2 territory right now as part of this reimaging. And they come up to the shack, and he's like, let's go in. And she's like, let's not. He's like, yeah, come on, blah, blah, blah. You know how it is. And I've done the exploring of abandoned houses at midnight thing back when I was 19. A group of us. And it can be scary as shit. It can. Fun. Get your heart rate going sometimes. But fun, nonetheless. Houses that's been abandoned for years. There's a ton of them around here. But this was more of a house, a very small house, but more of a house that was just completely falling apart. Okay. Now, they get inside. He's shining a flashlight around. They find that locket that was around Jason's mother, Pamela Voorhees' neck. They open it up, and the guy's like, he turns to Amanda Righetti's character. He says, this looks like you. And she said, no, it doesn't. And you look at it, and you're like, yeah, it does kind of favor her a little bit. And so she decides that she's going to keep it. And they go into one room, and it's crazy. You see a lot of stuff from the 80s in there. 70s and 80s in this old house. There's even a TV with the screen knocked out in it. One of those old wooden console TVs. Like you saw back in the day. You see little toys. Yankee Doodle Dandy. You see the monkey that claps the cymbals together. They get into a kid's room. And he's shining the light across the room. And it shines across the headboard. And it says, Jason. And I saw that and I was like, oh, fuck, that's really, really effective. It was really creepy, really effective. And the guy goes, wasn't Jason the name of that dude in blah, blah, blah story he was telling us a minute ago? And she's like, I don't know, but we need to get out of here. Let's get out of here. And he says, well, hold on. So they get into a back room. They open the door. And there's like a string of Christmas lights hanging up that's lit up. And I'm like, okay, there's electricity. Who the hell's paying the electric bill out here? Maybe he's tapped into somebody. Or maybe somehow the electric's still on at the camp. We find out later, yeah, that's actually the case, to be honest with you. So, don't ask me how that happens. I don't know. Movie magic. But that kind of thing doesn't bother me. It really doesn't rub me the wrong way. I actually know people that kind of thing drives them nuts. It just don't bother me. So, there's an opening tore out of the wall. Bathtub's down here filled up with some nasty-ass water. And they see something. They think it's like a stuffed animal or something, or they're like, is that a dead cat? What is that? They pull it out. It's Pamela Voorhees' head. We're in full part 2 territory now. Very akin. There's sort of like the way it's set up, there's candles too. Kind of like that little shrine that Jenny goes to in part 2 at the end, and they're like, oh shit. Drops the head down in the bathtub, and all of a sudden, boom, the front door to the place slams. It's like, oh fuck, highly effective. We're still in the prologue of this movie before we get to the title. Jesus, and I'm at 31 minutes already. But the look on the guy's face that's her boyfriend, the look on his face is priceless. Very effective acting from him in this. You're like, we still don't know what Jason looks like. We still don't know. We haven't seen him. We're just starting to get this real sense. Yeah, he's around. Well, the guy that went off to the woods to piss, Jason got to him, charged out, killed him, while Sister Christian's playing from Night Ranger on his headphones. A great little nod back to like 1980. Very odd little things like that I really liked in the movie. So, and also a damn good 80s song. So anyway, they have yet to see Jason. Well, they saw a shadow under the door. So he's taking his flashlight and he's walking up. Well, right as he gets up to the door, all of a sudden, boom, fucking machete strikes start coming up through the bottom of the floor in this old house. And you're like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. This guy's trying to get up off the floor. Well, boom, one goes through his foot, or his calf. So now he's on sort of one leg, and then one comes through like another piece of leg. And it's bad news. They're all the way back to the room where the head was. And all of a sudden the floor opens up. And he starts getting drug underneath, and he's screaming, oh, God, God. And blood starts coming out of his mouth. Very good. Highly effective, highly scary. You're like, oh, crap. This dude is getting gutted or something. I don't know what's happening here. And then he starts telling her, Whitney. Whitney's her name. Whitney, run. Run, Whitney. And she takes off and starts hauling ass. This movie has a score, a new theme, a new music score combined with Harry Manfredi's score. Okay, so it's kind of a mesh between, but it's a driving score. It's like a wah, wah, and it sounds better than that, but. It's very intense. As she's running, that starts playing. She's coming through the house. As she goes out the door, all of a sudden, boom, another door. There's like these doors that lead under the house. Kind of like just, I guess they're on hinges. The floor is on hinges. The floor's on hinges, and boom, it swings up, and Jason comes up out of it, and it's like, you get your first glimpse of him from like torso up, and you're like, oh, shit. That was my first response when I saw it in the theater. I was like, oh, shit! Holy crash! What? Holy shit! What's happening here? This is Jason? Bitch, run! Comes up, gets up, and is quick. Quick. You remember there was some running in Friday 2, Friday 3, Friday 4? They wanted to bring running back. Okay, this is different. This is running, quickness, and he is wearing that sack on his head. And when I tell you it's the scariest fucking sack in the history of all sacks, It makes part two's sack look like a sorry sack. He pops up with that. It's got that one eye hole, but it looks, when you combine the sack with Derek Mears' physique and height, you're like, holy shit. And they had finally done something that I think the Friday films desperately needed. They turned Jason into Jaws with a machete. Holy hell. He comes flying up out of that. Once he throws that door back at the bottom and comes up out of the floor fast. You're like, oh, Christ, what are we dealing with here? And the music's going. When you get back, he has sensed, grabbed the girl out of the tent. He has tied her up and hung her over the fire in the sleeping bag. She is cooking on the inside of the sleeping bag. Awesome. And the other dude, the guy that was in there that was screwing her, he had went out to take a piss or look around or something. He was trying to get back to the tent. As he was running back to her, he gets caught in a bear trap that Jason had set out there. Now, oddly enough, they put out a real trap when they were filming. They had a fake one and a real one, and they put the wrong one out. Now, did it maim the guy's leg like it showed in the movie? No. But yeah, he kind of took a hurting on his leg. I was like, how do you make that kind of mistake during filming? Amanda Righetti, Whitney, runs back. Body falls out of the sleeping bag. She's cooked. She's ready to eat if this was Chainsaw. She runs up to the guy that's caught in the bear trap. She's trying to get him out of the bear trap. And he's like looking, and then he looks up, and Jason's standing about 30 feet behind Whitney, standing there holding the machete. And the guy looks up, and all over his face, and he's a good actor. Highly effective all over his face. I'm fucked.
Whitney!
You just see it on his face. I'm fucked. And Jason runs at full steam. Boom. Splits his head wide open with a machete. With that machete. We're still wearing bag heads here. And then Whitney is crawling backwards on the ground. Jason does this badass turnaround and charges at her. Raises the machete, and that's where the title credits come on, and you saw that at the beginning of this. And I will tell you, the theater, the entire theater, erupted in applause. I've seen that I have been to the movies. I got to think I've seen 1,000 movies in the theater. I can count on one hand how many times I've heard that much applause in a theater over anything. The crowd went nuts over the first 21 minutes of this movie because we just saw Jaws with a machete. Big, tall, imposing, fast, violent, physical. It's unlike any portrayal of Jason Voorhees we have ever seen. And, that continues throughout the film. We get the next set of folks. We flash forward 6 weeks. We get the next set of would-be victims. A guy is going out there with some college friends to his dad's cabin. He's a rich boy, played by Travis Van Winkle, who has been in some Michael Bay movies. Blonde-headed guy, complete and total, utter douchebag. When I tell you he is the walking embodiment of a douche nozzle, that's him. And you can't wait for this asshole to eventually die in this movie. He is a total dick. And they pull up to a store, they get out. Jared Padalecki's character is in there, and he is trying to hand out a flyer with, guess what? Whitney's picture on it. Whitney is his sister. His name is Clay. Now, this film missed a huge opportunity with one change they could have made. Don't call his character Clay. He should have been Tommy Jarvis. He should have been Tommy Jarvis. And I know when I had my horror website, there were rumors that they kicked it around that he might be Tommy. And they never mentioned that in the documentary. But there were rumors, just like with Star Wars or anything, when there's rumors surrounding, there were rumors that Clay, what ended up being called Clay, was going to be Tommy Jarvis. Now, whether or not Whitney was going to be Trish, I don't know. But that would have been an easy win for this film, for the fans. And it's one thing that I don't like about the film. You know, I mean, does it really take anything away from Clay's character? No. He's one of the better characters in the movie. And it's nice that they weren't afraid to make a guy the lead character, opposite Jason. We hadn't seen that in a long time. It's if you take out Freddy, right? But we hadn't seen that since John D. LeMay and Jason Goes to Hell, and we hadn't really seen that since Tommy Jarvis. So it was just nice that they weren't afraid. And Jared Padalecki's no little guy. He's about 6'3", probably about 215. So now Jason's 6'5", 245 in this. You know, Derek Mears is a big boy. Derek Mears, we'll spend a second on Derek. Derek was in The Hills Have Eyes 2. He's a stuntman and an actor. The Hills Have Eyes 2. He also played one of the Predators in Predators, the Robert Rodriguez written Predators movie, the one that's good with Adrian Brody. He was, I believe, he was the Predator hanging up when they walked into the Predator camp. The one that eventually was freed. I think that was his Predator that he played. So he's played Jason Voorhees. He's played a Predator. And to DC fans, he is Swamp Thing. That DC series that got canceled, Swamp Thing, that was getting raves from DC fans on how good it was. I know some of the most critical people in the fandom menace that loved Swamp Thing, and they canceled it. There's rumors it might come back. I know Derek wants it to come back. I'm friends with Derek on my Facebook. I know he would like to see it come back. So that's the only thing I hate about the channel changing and the sub count dropping, because I wanted Derek on the channel. And I won't even ask him or Tom Matthews till I get I'll have to have 5,000 subs at least before I'll even approach it. They would probably do it now if I just asked, but I'm not going to do that. I want them when they know that they're if I bring them on a live stream that it's going to be watched, So anyway, so they missed a huge thing with not having Tommy Jarvis, and Derek is so good in this thing as Jason. Now, we get out to the cabin. Teens split off, or young adults. I think they're supposed to be late teens, but these are young adults. I'm sorry. We've seen that in other Friday movies where it was supposed to be teens, and you're like, Jesus, I'm pretty sure they're 23. They're 25, okay? So, they shouldn't be in college. They should be graduated if they got their shit together. So, no judgment, but I'm just saying that's a fact. So, anyway, the killing starts, and one of the other actresses in this movie is Danielle Panabaker, who is most known for being in The Flash as Killer Frost. And she's good in this. She's a good girl in this. She does all the right things in this. And she takes a liking to Clay. She showed up with Travis Van Winkle, the douche nozzle, but she leaves with Clay, as Clay is on this mission he's going around town. He's going around Crystal Lake. He stopped at 2 houses to give out the flyer. Have you seen her? Stopped at an old woman's house that has a hell of a big German Shepherd that scares the hell out of him. She comes to the door, and he says, my sister's missing, blah, blah, blah. Very effective scene. She looks at him, and she says, son, people go missing around here. They ain't never seen no more. She's dead. People around here just want to be left alone. And so does he. He was like, so does who? She turns around and walks off. And you're like, so the old timers know about Jason, because he stops at a farmhouse where a farmhand is working. And evidently he's being hired by some old guy that lives there. Well, he says somebody's been stealing kerosene. Well, that somebody was Jason. Jason was stealing kerosene, I guess, for light in his house. And but Jason's been coming around there and hadn't killed that old man that lived there. And you find out, and it's very effective. Look. Jason's killing in this particular film especially, not only for revenge for his mother, but he's also killing because you're trespassing. This is his place. This is his domain. This is his property. And this is the Texas version of Jason. You are trespassing. You don't belong here. And I'm going to make sure you don't ever leave here. Okay? And, by the way, they don't actually ever say where this was supposed to be. Everybody just assumes it's New Jersey still. But even the writer said, yeah, we don't say exactly where this Crystal Lake is. Okay? So, that's interesting. Good God, we're at 50 minutes almost. And, yeah, we're into it. So, everybody starts dying one at a time. I will say, there are good kills in this movie, but not great kills. And there's something else that drives people nuts about this film that to me makes a lot of sense. The filmmakers wanted to establish, why is it that Jason can just pop up in different parts of the property? We've seen that over the years. Ta-da, Jason's here. It's because Crystal Lake and this land was built over mining shafts. So there were point A to point B entrances and exits around the property. And that's how, and he had little traps set up like Clay's character and Panabaker's character were running out of the Crystal Lake and the camp and jarred a little string that was hanging, and it rang a bell down below. He mainly lives below the house. He's not really living up in the main house. He's living in those tunnels. Yeah. And we find out when the bell rings, we find out that he did not kill Whitney. He has taken her capture. Something else that drove a lot of people crazy. Well, Jason doesn't take hostages. And I'm going to tell you, I actually liked it. Because it humanized Jason. Again, gave him a little bit more of a human element. And Derek Mears did a phenomenal job of conveying emotion out of Jason. There's even a part where he finds she's got that locket of his mother's, and he finds it and he opens it up and he looks at her and she says, "It's okay, Jason." And his head is, he looks up at her and he's startled and he gets angry over that and he storms off. So she knows who he is because of the story and because of the headboard. And it's he had grabbed her because she favors his mother. Okay? It made some sense to me. It gave, the thing I liked about this movie is the main pluses are around Jason, the character himself, and it gave him more depth. And Jason's not an idiot in this. He's not like a hillbilly moron. He's got some Rambo First Blood type qualities in this. There's a hunter aspect to Jason in this movie. I am a predator aspect. I can hunt you down. Not like a rampaging killer, serial killer, more of like a hunter. You're on my property, I'm hunting you down like you're a deer or an elk. Okay, that's my takeaway from it. And I really liked it. I liked it a lot. Some hardcore fans absolutely hate it. Now, the biggest negative to this movie, without a doubt, is the ancillary characters that we meet that are part of the main storyline. They're awful. The characters that come with the douche nozzle. Travis Van Winkle is interesting because he's a complete asshole. Danielle Panabaker's character is very interesting because she's like the little nice girl. She's going around with Clay later trying to find Whitney. But the rest of the characters are so wildly annoying. And they're so annoying, not only can Jason not kill them fast enough, he literally can't kill them fast enough to get them off of your blessed screen because I just can't stand them. Okay, acting-wise, God, yeah, they're better than, say, the ancillary characters in Jason X. But they're just annoying. They're the epitome of 2000s millennials douchebags. No offense if you're a millennial, but, I mean, they make me want to hit myself in the face 19 times with my fist. I can't stand them, and they are absolutely the weak link in this movie. I don't care about them, and they can't die quick enough. And their deaths weren't brutal enough. They weren't gory enough. And there is good gore in this movie. But it could have been turned up a notch. So that's another knock I've got it against the movie. Now we get down to the end. Danielle Panabaker, Amanda Rigetti, who is Whitney, and Clay are all three together now. They're trying to escape from the inside of the tunnels. They come to an old bus that is turned on its side. The tunnel comes out under the bus. Very, very smart. Danielle Panabaker is about to come out, and all of a sudden, boom, a machete comes up out of her chest from behind. And when you're seeing this for the first time, it's very surprising and very shocking, because with the tone of her character, you absolutely believe she might be the last one standing in this thing, because she's the good girl. And you think she might be the one that defeats him in this. And instead, they killed her. And they did it fast. And they did it, and you feel bad because it comes through her and she looks up. And her and Clay have gotten a connection. Like, you're thinking, if they make this out of this, they're going to be an item for at least a little while. She really likes him. He likes her. And she looks up at him, and he's looking down at her. Very good facial recognition from Jared of pure shock, pure horror that she just got, that she's going to die. That blow killed her. And he's like, no. And she's like, and then Jason just grabs her and just throws her body right out of the way. And so they get out of there. They get back around to that farmhouse they were at earlier. The farmhouse, by the way, is where Jason acquires, a la a barn, a la Part 3. And in case you're wondering if that mask looks really familiar, they literally brought in the original mold of the Part 3 mask. That's why you don't see the axe chop yet in the mask. The original mold, and then they gave it some flavor, some wear, but he finds the mask in that farmhouse after he kills that old boy, the ranch hand, farm hand guy, total idiot. But he originally cut the guy's head off, and the guy was wearing the mask, and he took it away. But the film, the scene they used was actually just he kills the guy, and then Jason is bending over for something, and the mask is right. You can barely see a little bit of it sticking out from behind this like sheet that's hanging. And he reaches up and he pulls it back, and the music goes, and Jason picks it up, puts the mask on, walks over to the mirror and looks in this broken mirror. Very cool, very creepy scene. And he looks badass wearing this hockey mask. So, and you're already thinking, good God, you've been Jaws with a machete wearing a sack, and now you got the mask on. You really look imposing as hell. They get back around to that barn, and there's a third act scuffle. Jason gets tied up in these chains, and the chains are thrown into a chipper, and it gets wrapped up, and they're starting to drag him towards the chipper, and Whitney puts a machete into his chest. And she says, "Say hello to mommy in hell." One of the worst, cringiest lines ever. And at least Amanda Rigetti knew it, because in the documentary she says, "I absolutely hated the line and I pleaded for it to not be in the movie." And they used it anyway, and yeah, people hate the line, and I hate the line. It's a terrible line. They could have literally said, I'm not going to say anything else, but something less cringy than that. "Say hello to mommy in hell." It was just awful, and she knew it. So I give her some credit as an actress. She knew it was a bad line, and she fought for it to get cut, and they didn't cut it. So, look, I need them to do better. when they make these movies. And so we get back out to the lake. The ending of the movie, they're on the dock. Jason's dead. They roll his body over into the water. They got the mask. They toss the mask in the water. Body starts floating down. And she's sitting on the dock. Clay's standing up. Probably like 6 feet away from her, behind her. All of a sudden, Jason bursts up out of the dock, grabs her, and the movie goes off. And I still don't know. And they didn't talk about it. I still don't know if that was a dream sequence or if that was real. They left it open-ended because they were going to make a sequel to this thing. Brad Fuller had every intention of making part 2. And it just never happened. They started working on it. This thing had been worked on multiple times over the last 11 years. And they thought at one point that they was going to have it shot, done, and the sequel would come out in like 2015 or 2016. And then all the licensing stuff started happening. And then the lawsuit. And now Victor Miller's rights have kicked back in on the character. And Sean's got Friday, the title. Now, if you've made it this far, I'll give you a nugget on the lawsuit. And I'll probably do a separate video to it, but you can hear it first now. There were some Friday the 13th figures that came out from NECA about 2 weeks ago from Part 7. And there was some controversy on Twitter because people were like, they're releasing figures. Is the lawsuit over? And Larry Zerner said, no, far as I know, the lawsuit has not been settled. However, Warner Brothers is still involved with this character. And oddly enough, Warner Brothers gave the green light for the figures to go ahead and be released. Well, evidently, Zerner said a year ago, Warner Brothers wouldn't let any merch come out. So they have now decided to let some merch get released for Friday the 13th. But he said, even though there was speculation the lawsuit would be done and over in June, except COVID, now there's this much speculation that something is going on with the lawsuit. And look, we can't get any more movies until the lawsuit is settled. Sean S. Cunningham did produce this movie along with Brad Fuller, Michael Bay, and Andrew Form. So Sean Cunningham was involved in this film and did put some money up for it. So Derek is signed on. If the movie is done in part with Platinum Dunes, Derek is signed on to play Jason in one more film. And that's the Friday movie I want to see. I want a sequel to this Friday the 13th film. And they thought it was a slam dunk. They thought this film's getting a sequel. We're doing a sequel. It made a ton of money. It's absolutely getting a part 2. And it was supposed to be set in the snow. But that hasn't happened. Now Never Hike Alone 2 will be set in the snow. And we got a little tease for the trailer the other day I saw. And it's coming in September. The trailer for Never Hike Alone 2, I think, is coming. So I'll definitely do a reaction to that. And we're gonna do a watch party on Never Hike Alone. Even if 3 people sat through it with me, I don't care. I'll go live and we'll watch it. Because it's on YouTube, we can all start it and watch it together. So, 8 out of 10. I give this movie an 8 out of 10. I'm critical over the fact that Clay was not Tommy Jarvis. I think it would have been an easy win. The rumors were there. Brad Fuller, if you watch this somehow, some way, and this will go on, I'll put this over on the website, the incarnation that still exists anyway, the scab version that's free. It's not hosted on a great platform anymore. It's just on Blogger now. It's a Blogger version of the original website. I'll put this over there, but if he somehow sees this, Brad Fuller, you missed the opportunity not making Clay Tommy Jarvis. In my opinion, it's the number one story that Friday fans want, is they want to see Tommy Jarvis and Jason go. Again, preferably in a trilogy. And from now on, for the foreseeable future, this is for Platinum Dunes, this is for Warner Brothers, this is for Paramount, this is for New Line. Victor Miller, Sean Cunningham. He's plenty young enough. Derek Mears should play this version of Jason for the next 5 films. For the next 10 to 15 years. He should play this version of Jason. Let him continue to be fast, physically imposing. He is far away my favorite portrayal of Jason. Again, he is Jaws with a machete in this thing. Wildly physical. Wildly physical. And while C.J. Graham and Kane both played zombie versions of Jason, if you made it a level playing field, and I love C.J. Graham, I do. He's my number 2 Jason. But if you made it a level playing field, and those 2 versions, Kane's, C.J. Graham's versions, were human, and put them against this version would absolutely stomp the monkey hell out of those Jasons. And he would certainly stomp the shit out of the Jasons we got in Part 2, Part 3. And no offense, Ted White, because you were really good. But he would just steamroll all of them. Now, he obviously wouldn't steamroll a zombie Frankenstein Jason. He'd get broke in half. But if it was a human level playing field, Derek would absolutely let Freddy get into the human world against this Jason as fast as he is, and that would have been what I wanted to see. They'd have had a 3-minute movie on their hands, because it would have gotten ugly. Now, if they eventually want to let Derek play a Frankenstein version of Jason, I wouldn't mind seeing that. But I don't want to see it until he plays a couple of 3 more movies as the human version. I want the stakes of Jason being able to die to remain there. And I want the emotional side that he adds to Jason in the portrayal. 8 out of 10. Now, the next 2 movies, and there's only 2 to choose from now, there is a substantial step up for both films. And they are in a dogfight. I can tell you right now, I believe there's a quarter point that separates both films. Top 1 and top 2. But this is part 3, or number 3 on my rank. I know I'm going to get people that come through here and like, I cannot believe you've got this high. I wish more people had an appreciation for this movie. I really do. I really do, because I think there's parts of this film that are phenomenal. Phenomenal. I think it takes a wildly bad rap. I really do. I really do. But then again, wait till we get to Halloween. So, Gomer Kyle, if you made it this far, you're a trooper. John Matrix, if you made it this far, you're a trooper. An hour and 8 minutes, although there will be a couple of small cuts. So, peace. I'm out. Hit subscribe. You're awesome if you made it this far. Till next time.
King Kong in the trunk. King Kong, King Kong, King Kong.